Z28 is the Camaro no one expected. It's low and wide and with standard carbon ceramic brakes. Who would have thought we'd ever see a Camaro so built thoroughly for road racing? With its squinty, angry eyes and harsh angles, the Z28 looks like it's ready to punch someone in the face. There's no mistaking the function over form approach here, though its black 19-inch wheels might be the best looking ones you can get on a new car today. The Z28 would seem to be more analog of the two, with a manual transmission and a simple torsion diff and no four-wheel steering or brake-actuated torque vectoring. Now, it makes do with fixed, high-dollar Multimatic shocks and the widest front tires you'll see on any production car. Its 7-liter V8 makes 505 horsepower, but it makes that power 150 RPM before the GT3 makes its peak torque. The GT3 is the 911 you expect Porsche to make. It's the most extreme version, lighter, lower, and wider for better aero and more grip, and throw in a 9,000 RPM redline, well, just for the fun of it. The GT3's enlarged air inlets and vents and its fixed rear wing give the normally refined 911 shape an air of aggression. You know it's a 911, but you also know it's a special one. A business suit with a few buttons undone, let's say. For it being a purist car, you might be surprised to learn that the GT3 has more variable and electronically controlled hardware, from its four-wheel steering to its differential to its adaptive engine mounts. Also, the only transmission option is a 7-speed twin-clutch gearbox. Forget about that for a second because 1. Porsche's PDK might be the best in the business, and 2. The big-bore short-stroke 3.8-liter flat-6 revs to 9,000 RPM and punches out 475 horsepower in the process. The brakes are of course the optional carbon ceramics, which means 16.1-inch diameter rotors up front with 6-piston calipers and 14.1-inch rotors in the rear with 4-piston calipers. Admittedly, this is a lopsided pairing due to the $70,000 in as-tested price disparity, not to mention the weight and size difference. The Z28 is massively longer, wider, taller, and heavier. But both cars have big wings, both cars have all-aluminum dry-sumped high-revving engines, and both cars are the most extreme performance variants of their respective marques. Despite being down on power and torque, the GT3's lower weight and faster shifting transmission gives it the advantage everywhere. Neither car was intended for drag racing, but the 911's launch control gets it out of the hole faster than the Z28, and it accelerates harder as the run continues. With an 11.3-second quarter-mile pass at 122.9 miles an hour, the GT3 leads the Z28 by 1 second and nearly 7 miles an hour. Aided by sticky tires and beefy carbon ceramics, braking performance falls much closer between the two. The GT3's best stop from 60 took 98 feet. The Camaro took 100 feet. The GT3 again led the figure 8, posting a spectacular 22.8-second lap, which makes it tied for the third fastest car around the handling circuit. Average lateral acceleration was a very high 1.11 G. The Z28's lap was 0.8 of a second slower, again hurt by its weight, but also gear ratio spacing that left the engine on the red line right before the braking zone. It's still an impressive lap, and the Z28's 1.08 average lateral G is very impressive. The notion of cross-shopping these two might be ludicrous, but we couldn't resist the idea of getting both of these cars on the same roads and the same track. The Z28 is just a monster of a car. Yes, it's bigger, yes, it's heavier than the 911, and you notice that the second you go around a few corners. But the rate of speed you can go through corners in a car of this size and with this kind of capability and this kind of finesse is kind of awesome. Yes. The Z28 is just about punching things. It yells and screams at you and says, go faster and harder and more and more. This is a brawnier, beefier, muscular car, and this is a muscle car turned into a track car. That's what you get when you get a Z28. And that is, it's kind of a workout to push too, because of how big and everything is and how much mass you have to throw around. We're not beating physics, we're trying to get away with as much as we can. We're riding on the ragged edge of them. We have those massive 305 section width, and they help give this Camaro an amazing amount of turn-in. The braking feel from these carbon ceramics is terrific. The bite, the initial bite on the pedal is really, really good, and the stopping power is awesome. Of course, we have a ton of grip in these Pirelli P0s. They're an extreme tire, and once they get up to the temp, they offer an extreme amount of grip. When they're cold though, the tires are basically off. It's like they have an on-off position. So something you have to be careful about when you first start driving the car. Once they get to temp though, oh, it's all good. Yeehaw! Fly car mode. In the GT3, you noticed immediately its advantages over the Z28, and namely that's its size and its weight. This is a smaller, lighter car than the Camaro, but you expect that from a 911. But it's also the first thing you notice. This car feels a lot easier to position in its lane than the Z28. You also don't have as much power in the lower parts of the tack as you do in the Z28, because this engine is all about high RPM stuff. It doesn't mean there's not a lot of mid-range. There's plenty of mid-range. This car is really nice to drive around above 5,000. But you notice that in the low corners, in the low speed corners. Now, this thing does seem to be more suited for a bumpy country road like this. The body control seems to be a little bit more refined and more sophisticated, and that's probably where your extra 100,000 and change is going towards. It's an unfair comparison to put this up between a Z28, because this is, you know, it's evident that there's a lot more money in this car, and that's why it costs so much more. But it's interesting that both of these cars are so satisfying to drive hard, despite how different their characters are. You have the Z28, which is this track-focused monster, and you have this GT3, which is satisfying on a track, but seems like it's built more just for driving satisfaction. This thing feels smoother, and it seems to be faster overall from corner to corner, just referencing my speed right now. But again, you'd expect that. This is the far more expensive car than the Camaro. The Camaro is a brute. It's a brute that can move really fast and move really well, but it doesn't have that smoothness that's just so innate in this chassis. The PDK, I don't know, which is better? You could really start arguing about manual and automatic transmissions here. The shift speed in this car is fantastic, but the Camaro, even though it's slower to shift it manually, it's still really nice to just grab that shift lever, throw it to the next gear, and slam the gas. It's a musical exhaust note, that one. And every time you hear it, you just want to repeat the sound over and over and over again, because it sounds so amazing. It's sing-song-like, and it's just beautiful. I want to get it on a MP3. And both of these cars will make you a very happy person.
Out of the pits, I'm a little careful in the Z28 because it's got these very aggressive Pirelli Trofeo R tires. And almost like a racing slick, they need a fair amount of warming up. Great V8 noises, so American. One of the best running V8 engines of all time. 427 cubic inches, I mean, come on. That's like a 66 big block Corvette. The ride is harsh. Suspension's very firm for track work. This is a track-focused product. It makes Willow Springs feel more rough than it is. Ton of torque, broad power band. I like the close ratios of second, third, and fourth gear. Wow, these carbon brakes are just fantastic on the Z28. I think the feel's even better than the Porsche in the brake zone. This Z28 is more alive than the ones I'm used to. That tail moves around. See that drift? Look at that. I've never felt Z28s move around this much before. Look at that oversteer. It's an old school manual and I love it because I'm old school and I enjoy the involvement. I mean, that's part of why we have a car like this, is to have a good time and have the driving experience of which shifting is very much a part. Camaro's a haul-ass good time car. Got little Dukes of Hazzard down in its blood, even though it's a Chevy. On the straightaway, 105 miles an hour. That's 9,000 RPM. Sounds just like the race car. The PDK shifter is tremendous. It is so well programmed that I can run this track flat out and I never even have to touch a shifter. A manual gearbox requires a tremendous amount of driver involvement, skill, precision, timing. A driver can damage a car, can blow an engine or spin a car instantly with a bad downshift. With a PDK, 98% of that is impossible. It's just not going to happen. So it's a better package all around. And this 911, boy, just put your foot down and let the computer do the work. Porsche GT3 is a race car for the street. That's its personality. Will wag the tail on the entry. See that trailing throttle oversteer? Happens right in the middle of the corner. The power stabilizes the car, but don't turn that stability control off unless you've had a lot of skid pad training. The noises are incredible. I think it sounds better than the race car does. The power actually balances the 911. It does not make it more loose, it makes it less loose. That is one of my definitions of a good handling car. And it's the single best thing that this 911 version does. It's a driver's car. Brakes are, of course, fantastic. They're wonderful. But you know what? So is the Z28. What we have here are two track weapons. The Porsche 911 GT3 is like doing track surgery. That Z28 is more brutal. High performance machines, the top of the line from each of their manufacturers. Both of them terrific on the racetrack. Very different personalities. Both of them really, really fast.
And now, a tire rack hot lap. couldn't give the GT3 a black eye on the track, the Z28 remains the blue-collar hero. It shouldn't be surprising that the lighter and more expensive Porsche is faster, but on the other hand, you could get a Z28, a truck, and a trailer and still have money left over for track days for the price of a GT3. The Z28 is the more visceral car here. It's the one that requires more effort to drive, but it's slightly more amusing too, mostly because of the things it can do in spite of its weight and size. Not to mention, it looks and sounds absolutely fantastic. It's always a good thing when cars this focused and capable exist, but it's still almost unbelievable that not only do we have a track-focused car from Chevy, but it's a Camaro. Considering the V6 base car as the starting point, the Z28 feels like a miracle. Alas, when you hop in the GT3, you instantly see and feel where the extra money goes. It goes everywhere. The 911 is not only faster, but more refined and friendlier too. Its lower weight and size makes it more willing and playful on back roads and on the track, but it's comfortable enough to commute too thanks to its active engine mounts, four-wheel steering, and so on. What's most impressive is that the GT3 is able to hide all of its electronic assists and variable hardware from the driver when you want to have fun. It still feels linear and provides the experience you'd expect from the best of driver's cars.
Yes! It's easy to get in this car after the 911 and start singing to yourself, just some good old boys, never making no harm, you know? Oh, it's like Clint Eastwood, like doing Matthew McConaughey. Alright,